Hey guys, tonight we're leaving behind soft pillows and climate control to take a sleepy little stroll into one of the least comfy time periods ever, the Middle Ages. Imagine waking up not in your bed, but on a pile of moldy straw, swaddled in a blanket that smells like wet goat. There's a damp breeze poking through the holes in your wall, something is moving in your thatch roof, and oh, there's no bathroom. Just a bucket. Somewhere. Possibly already full. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is. I love seeing where these bedtime journeys reach. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You stir awake in your 14th century hut. There's no alarm clock. No phone. Just a rooster who thinks it's hilarious to scream at nothing in particular. You sit up slowly, careful not to knock your head against the low, sloping beams above. Your breath forms a little puff in the cold air. Yes, you're inside, but the air in here could pass for outdoor quality, minus the fresh part. The bed, or let's just call it the heap, consists of straw, rags, and the lingering warmth of a dog that snuck in during the night. Your back crackles like firewood. You reach up to scratch your head and dislodge something. Possibly hay. Possibly lice. Historians still argue whether people actually had a word for personal hygiene, or if they just considered dirt part of the outfit. You rise and shuffle toward the corner where the wash basin sits. The water is icy. Splashing it on your face doesn't so much wake you as insult your dignity. Soap. That's cute. You have ashes and maybe some sand to scrub with, if you're lucky. Your teeth feel fuzzy. You run your tongue along them and consider the state of oral hygiene. There isn't one. Toothbrushes are for royalty, and even they often relied on twigs or a bit of linen. Breakfast calls. Or growls. You open the creaky wooden door, step outside, and nearly twist your ankle on a loose stone. The yard is more of a mud pit, strewn with chicken droppings, broken tools, and something suspiciously like yesterday's stew. You catch a whiff of wood smoke, and the distant grumbling of your neighbor, who's already up and complaining about the frost. You make your way to the hearth. This is where food magic happens, by which I mean someone's boiling water with some old turnips in it. Bread sits nearby, a heavy, coarse loaf, known more for its ability to chip teeth than satisfy hunger. Sometimes the grain is mixed with ground-up tree bark. You bite in. It tastes like regret, and possibly mold. Historians note that medieval bread often included ergot, a fungus that could cause hallucinations, so at least there's a small chance breakfast gets interesting. You glance toward your only bowl. It's made of wood, darkened with age and use. No dishwasher here. Just a quick rinse in yesterday's soup water, and maybe a wipe with your sleeve if you're feeling fancy. Your wooden spoon has a crack in it, but you've learned to sip from the side. The ceiling drips. No one waterproofed the roof this year, and your family's patch job involved stuffing sheep wool into the gaps. You're starting to think the sheep were smarter. The air smells of smoke, boiled onions, and wet wool. You'd like to say you've gotten used to it, but your nose stopped registering smells after the great cabbage incident of last Thursday. You hear footsteps. Your younger sibling, barefoot and clutching a potato like it's a teddy bear, shuffles past. He sneezes. Somewhere in the village, a door slams. That sneeze might have just caused panic. People still whisper that illness travels through bad air, or miasmas, and sneezing is considered ominous. You file this under things to worry about later. You finish your gruelish breakfast, feeling as though you've eaten a warm puddle. You glance around the hut. There's one stool, a broken ladder, and a single candle left. Wax is expensive. You'll save that for Sunday. Outside, the day begins, gray, damp, and full of purpose. Or at least full of puddles. Chickens peck the ground near your feet. One of them eyes you with suspicion. You suspect it knows something. This is your life. No coffee, no shower, no podcasts, just dirt, damp socks, and the distant sound of the Lord's oxen clomping down the road, dragging something that probably smells worse than your breakfast. You miss your thermostat. You miss your shampoo. You miss options. And this is only morning. You step outside, armed with nothing but a wooden spoon and a deeply simmering sense of dread. The sky is that particular shade of medieval gray, the kind that makes you feel like the sun has quit out of protest. Your breath fogs in front of you as you step around a particularly determined puddle. Breakfast may be over, but your stomach is already composing an angry letter to the kitchen. Not that the kitchen cares. In fact, calling that smoky corner of your hut a kitchen is already giving it way too much credit. There are no countertops, no seasoning racks, no leftovers. Just a pot hanging over a fire and a stick you use to stir whatever mystery stew is melting in there. Today, it was something approximating a turnip, yesterday's bread ends, and what might have once been a carrot. Your teeth ache from the crusty loaf you gnawed earlier. That's normal. Everyone has at least one cracked molar by the age of 20, assuming they've made it that far. Dental hygiene is, at best, an oral myth. You might get lucky and chew on a mint leaf once a year. Otherwise, food is served with a crunchy side of sand and pebbles, especially if your local mill hasn't cleaned the grindstone properly. Some people wrap cloth around twigs to scrub their teeth, but let's be honest, you're not doing that before sunrise on an empty stomach. And don't even think about salt or sugar. Sugar is a luxury known only to the ultra-rich, and even then, it's basically used more like medicine or decoration than food. You might get honey on holidays, but not before an angry bee teaches you a lesson. Salt exists, but it's expensive, and it's more likely to be hoarded for preserving meat than seasoning your peasant breakfast sludge. You hear someone hammering nearby, your neighbor, old Giles, trying to patch his roof again. He curses in Old French and spits on the ground. You wave. He doesn't wave back. He's still mad that your chickens ate his radish crop last month. You offered to share your moss soup in return. He declined. Time to think about your next meal. You don't really have a pantry. You have a shelf. On it, there's a bowl with dried peas, a moldy cheese rind, and 2 apples, one of which seems to be fermenting into cider all by itself. You sniff the cheese. It sniffs back. You open a small cloth pouch containing lard and tallow, used for both cooking and, sometimes, lighting. That's a choice you get to make. Would you like to eat tonight or see while you eat? Historians still argue whether peasants burned more animal fat in lamps or simply ate in darkness to save calories. As you weigh your options, you decide to step inside and check on the bread again. Bread is a staple here, dense, dark, and built like a medieval hockey puck. It's called trencher bread when it's thick enough to be used as a plate, which is both impressive and a bit alarming. After a day or two, this bread can stop a sword. 3 days in, and it might stop a carriage. Still, it's what you've got. You scrape some bean mash onto it, which slowly oozes down the side. The beans are undercooked. Of course they are. Everything in this era is either undercooked or suspiciously too charred. There's no middle ground, no digital thermometer, no spice rack. Just heat, guesswork, and strong teeth, if you have any left. You sit on the one low stool you own. It wobbles like a goat on stilts. You chew slowly, thinking about how your ancestors survived wars, plagues, and famine, and somehow this flavorless bean biscuit is what finished them off. Just when you think you've made peace with your sad little meal, your younger sibling runs in and asks if you remembered to trade for more flour yesterday. You didn't. You were too busy chasing the neighbor's pig out of your firewood pile. Again. So now, unless you want boiled weeds for dinner, you'll need to make the trek to the mill. But before that, you decide to rinse your mouth. Not with mouthwash, but with a weak ale or cider, because water, well, it's mostly considered a gamble. It might be clean. It might be cholera. The ale's weak, but at least it's been boiled. Plus, the mild buzz helps you forget that your breakfast had the consistency of a wet boot. You open the door again, stepping into the cold morning mist. The dirt path is already filling with slush. A dog is chewing something unidentifiable near the fence. It might be food. Might be someone's missing sock. It growls when you get too close, and you mutter an apology, because frankly, you're not in the mood for a tetanus-adjacent bite. Even as you shiver, your nose picking up hints of pigsty and last week's leaks, your stomach lets out another groan. It's not angry now. It's just disappointed. You stop for a moment to adjust your cloak. It's not much, just a rough wool sheet with a fraying cord, but it's all you've got between you and the wind. Wool is everywhere here. Itchy, damp, heavy wool. You try not to think about what's been woven into it. That's a dark path. Somewhere nearby, a rooster crows again. Late. Rude. Possibly drunk on leftover barley mash. You sigh and take one last sip of your ale tooth rinse combo before trudging onward, hoping lunch, if it happens, will be less gray. Spoiler, it won't be. The next ordeal of the day is getting dressed. It should be easy, right? You just throw on some clothes. Except, these are not clothes as you know them. No cotton tees. No elastic waistbands. No soft hoodies. What you've got instead is wool. Glorious, scratchy, questionably dyed wool, spun thick and dyed with whatever your village could get its hands on. Plants, roots, sometimes bugs. You begin by slipping on your shirt, which is technically called a tunic, but feels more like a potato sack with dreams. It's long, beigeish, and smells vaguely of sheep and damp stone. The sleeves are a little tight around the elbows because they were made for someone else. Possibly someone with better posture and shorter arms. Then come the hose. Oh, the hose. Two separate wool tubes that you pull over your legs like medieval leggings. They tie at the waist with laces connected to your undergarments, which are more string than fabric at this point. You contort yourself into shapes that resemble medieval yoga poses, trying not to fall over or strangle yourself with your own trousers. Shoes? Let's not get our hopes up. You have leather soles, barely stitched to the uppers, and they offer the support of a soggy pancake. The moment you step in a puddle, which is always, they soak through, and now your toes are both freezing and feeling very close to nature. You reach for your outer tunic, the one that goes over the first tunic, because layering isn't about fashion, it's about survival. Fashion, by the way, is a joke here. Everyone's wearing a variant of earth-toned fabric potato. The only real style points are in hats. Ah yes, the hat. Today, you're blessed with a coif, a fitted linen cap that hugs your head like a clingy ghost. It's supposed to keep you warm and clean, but it mostly makes you look like you lost a bet. Some folks wear wide felt hats or pointed woolen hoods called chaperones, which make them look like background characters in a medieval play about sadness. You catch your reflection in a dented pot. You look authentic. As in, authentically like someone who hasn't had a decent bath in a month and is developing a permanent squint from smoky fires. Your hands, already chapped, fumble with the leather belt you use to cinch your tunic. This is also where you hang your knife, your only tool, weapon, and utensil. You sharpen it weakly on a flat stone and guard it like it's made of gold, because in many ways, it's more useful than money. Your sibling walks in, rubbing their nose and asking if it's a church day. You tell them no, and they cheer because that means no stiff shoes or trying to sit still through 3 hours of Latin they don't understand. You envy them. Church days are like a field trip to Guiltland, with incense and kneeling. You adjust your belt pouch, your version of a medieval fanny pack, which holds such essentials as a crust of bread, 2 copper pennies, and a rock you're saving because it looks like a face. Treasure is relative. Outside, the wind howls again. Your cloak is still damp from yesterday, but there's no such thing as drying out unless the sun comes out, which it hasn't done since the harvest festival. That was weeks ago. You wrap the cloak around you anyway. It smells like the fireplace and your own despair. You step outside, doing your best not to slip in the ever-present mud. The village path is churned into a slop by boots, hooves, and the occasional runaway goose. Children run by wearing tunics too big or too small, laughing as they throw clumps of something at each other. You're 60% sure it's dirt. Maybe. One of the local ladies walks by in a linen kerchief, balancing a basket on her hip. It's filled with laundry and possibly 3 small cats. She nods at you. You nod back. Social interactions here are minimal and mostly revolve around acknowledging each other's continued existence. You glance down at your sleeves. They're already collecting bits of hay and soot. Clothing isn't just something you wear here, it's a sponge for the world around you. If you're lucky, you'll get to wash it in the river next week, provided it doesn't freeze first. Laundry, you recall, is a once-a-month experience. Clothes are boiled, beaten with sticks, and scrubbed against rocks. There's no detergent, just lye, soapwort if someone's fancy, or straight-up ashes. Then they're hung up in the smokehouse, which is great for drying but also makes your socks smell like bacon for 3 days. Historians still argue whether peasants took pride in their clothing or simply endured it. One theory suggests they developed a kind of stoic resignation to constant discomfort. Another theory says they were too busy not starving to care about fashion. You try to tug your tunic into place, but it's bunched up at the waist again. The belt is twisted. The hose are sagging. Your hat is slipping. You sigh. Dressing yourself in the 14th century is like playing a game of which string holds the whole thing together. And the joke is, it doesn't matter how well you dress. You'll be filthy by midday. Between the mud, the animals, the open fires, and the fact that you're about to walk 5 miles to the Lord's land, your wool ensemble will soon look like it survived a livestock stampede. Still, you check your shoes one more time, tighten your belt, and square your shoulders. You're not winning any beauty contests today, but you are, barely, dressed. Which means it's time to head to the field. May your feet be swift, your tunic stay untangled, and your hat not fall into the pig trough. Again. The field is calling, and by calling, we mean it's screaming through the wind like an angry goose with taxes to collect. You step onto the muddy road, which doubles as the village's main thoroughfare, drainage system, and general obstacle course. Your shoes, thin as they are, squelch ominously. You're not even 5 steps in, and your socks are already making that terrible wet spaghetti sound. As you trudge toward the fields, the first thing you notice is the sheer emptiness of the landscape. It's just you, the wind, and acres of brown. Flat brown, muddy brown, patchy brown that used to be green but gave up. A few sheep stare at you like they're in on some cosmic joke, and you probably are the punchline. This land isn't yours, of course. It belongs to the local lord, who owns not just the land, but your time, your labor, and technically your chickens. You work it under a system called manorialism, which is basically a fancy word for you owe me forever. You grow crops here, but a big portion of your harvest goes to the Lord, who might let you keep a few cabbages and a deeply haunted parsnip. Today's job is weeding and digging irrigation ditches. Your favorite. You take out your dull spade, already nicked from hitting one too many rocks last week, and start jabbing the soil. It resists you like an annoyed roommate. The wind keeps blowing your hood back, and every time you bend over, your tunic flaps open like a woolen sail. You work with others, neighbors, relatives, that one guy who always smells like turnips and mischief. Everyone's already bent double, poking the dirt like they're searching for buried treasure. Spoiler: there is no treasure. Just roots, rocks, and the occasional dead mouse. Your hands are numb. Not because it's freezing, though it is, but because the tool handle is rough wood and your gloves are theoretical. Some people wrap cloth around their hands. You do that too, until it falls off or catches fire near the forge. It takes about 10 minutes before your back starts complaining. The kind of low, tight pain that says, you are not built for this. But there's no chiropractor here, just hope and stretches that haven't been invented yet. You try to make small talk to pass the time. So, think we'll get barley again this year? A grunt. I mean, if the frost holds off and... Less talking, more digging, someone snaps. You're not offended. That's just how people speak when they've been plowing the same square of land since dawn and have only eaten turnip bread for 6 months straight. The mood lightens when a kid runs by with a goose under one arm, both of them honking. You watch, briefly entertained, before returning to your ditch. It's just deep enough to ruin your boots and not deep enough to drain anything. Historians still argue whether peasants had specific break times, or just paused when they physically collapsed. Either way, you don't dare stop for long. The reeve, sort of a medieval manager, is watching from the hill. He's got a stick and no sense of humor. You remember hearing that the Lord himself rarely visits the fields. He prefers staying in his manor house, sipping wine that costs more than your family earns in a year and complaining about the weather. If you're lucky, he'll come by once a season to inspect the work and pronounce everything adequate before retreating to his fireplace. You straighten up for a second, your back cracking like firewood. You wipe your brow with your sleeve and immediately regret it. Your sleeve is coated in something unidentifiable. Maybe dirt. Maybe sheep grease. Maybe your dignity. The sun, if you can call that dim gray smudge a sun, hasn't moved much. You still have hours to go. Your stomach grumbles again, reminding you that lunch is a concept, not a promise. If you pack something, it's probably a hunk of cheese the size of a baby's fist and a piece of bread with more personality than flavor. At least it's not harvest season. That's the real nightmare. Back-breaking labor from dawn till dusk, cutting, binding, carrying, stacking. Everyone in the village pitches in. Even the kids. Even the elderly. Even the guy who's definitely faking a limp for sympathy. You once spent 12 hours bent over cutting rye, and the only reward was that you didn't get your hand sliced off like Martin did last year. There's a shout near the woods, someone's seen a fox. Everyone tenses. Foxes are the enemy. Cute, yes, but they love chickens and ruin grain sacks. You grip your spade like a weapon, ready to defend your poultry-based assets. The fox is gone before you even reach the hedgerow. Smart little bandit. The afternoon wears on. The light never really brightens, it just shifts from cold gray to slightly warmer gray. Your breath still puffs in little clouds. Your hands are so dirty that when you scratch your head, you leave behind streaks like war paint. You fantasize about a warm bath, maybe with herbs. Then you remember, that's a luxury. Peasants bathe infrequently, usually in rivers or barrels. Soap is made from animal fat and lye and smells like decisions you regret. You do rinse your face occasionally, but mostly just to stop the itch. You take a break to sip from your water skin, which tastes like leather and disappointment. It's better than nothing. You chew on a bit of dried apple that might actually be just bark. You don't care. Your standards have been lowered to the earth itself. The reeve finally waves a hand. Time to start packing up. You've spent the day moving dirt and thinking about how much better dirt could be if it were someone else's problem. You gather your tools, stretch your back again, and start the long trudge home. As you leave the field, the sheep still stare at you. One bleats loudly, like it's laughing. You try to ignore it. You've got other things to worry about, like whether that blister on your heel is going to evolve into its own ecosystem. Still, you survived the field today. Your cloak is wet, your arms are sore, your stomach's still grumbling, but you're alive. Barely. Home, sweet shack. You approach your family's cottage with the sort of slow, dragging walk that suggests your soul left your body sometime after lunch. The door creaks as you push it open, not because of age, but because everything creaks here, including your joints. A plume of smoke rolls out to greet you, along with the scent of burning peat, boiled cabbage, and just a hint of regret. Inside, it's dim, smoky, and cramped. Your entire home is about the size of a modern studio apartment's closet, and you share it with at least 6 other people, 1 goat, and a rotating cast of poultry. The floor is packed earth, uneven from years of feet and the occasional pig nap. The walls are wattle and daub, sticks and mud, essentially, with a roof made of thatch that occasionally leaks and always hosts a vibrant ecosystem of bugs and suspicious rustling. You drop your tools by the doorway, careful not to trip over the chicken. She squawks indignantly and struts away, as if you've offended her on a personal level. Which, honestly, you probably have. Your mother is stirring a pot over the hearth. The fire crackles low, just enough to warm the air around it, leaving the rest of the house in a kind of ambient chill that settles into your bones like a disappointed ancestor. Whatever's in the pot smells edible-ish. It's a grayish stew, probably made of cabbage, barley, and the faintest whisper of meat. If it had any seasoning, it died centuries ago. You sit on a low wooden stool, really more of a wobble platform, and try to stretch out your legs. The family goat promptly eats part of your sleeve. There's no privacy here. No personal space. Your little sibling is napping in a corner wrapped in a faded wool blanket that used to be your uncle's cloak. Your father's sharpening a blade by candlelight, and your cousin is brushing her hair with a comb that lost half its teeth before you were born. Everyone's doing something, and no one's talking much. Conversation is a luxury, like butter or literacy. You pull off your damp cloak and hang it on a wooden peg near the fire, hoping it'll be slightly less wet by morning. It won't be. Nothing dries here. Moisture is a permanent resident, like mice or medieval injustice. Dinner is served in a communal wooden bowl. You get a scoop of stew and a chunk of bread that could also function as a weapon. It's coarse, dense, and tastes like it knows too much. You chew slowly, grateful that you still have all your teeth, unlike old Marjorie next door, who gummed her food and cursed like a sailor. Historians still argue whether peasant meals were always this bleak or if families had ways of spicing things up on occasion. Some evidence suggests the use of herbs like parsley and leeks, but honestly, no amount of greenery is going to transform cabbage mush into Michelin star fare. A little later, someone plays a tune on a bone flute. Yes, bone. It's what you use when you don't have wood, metal, or dreams. The music is thin, wavering, and oddly soothing in a way that says, "We're not thriving, but at least we have rhythm." You sigh and lean back against the wall, your muscles already stiffening from the day's labor. The smoke from the hearth tickles your throat, and you cough into your sleeve. It's always smoky in here. There's no chimney, just a hole in the roof that sometimes works, and sometimes doesn't. Your lungs are probably getting slowly cured like ham. There's one small window, covered in stretched animal bladder instead of glass. It lets in light, but everything outside looks like a watercolor of sadness. You peek through and see darkness rolling in. The sky's gone from cold gray to inky black, and the last few villagers are stumbling home, cloaks wrapped tight, shoulders hunched. You all settle in for the night. Beds? Not exactly. Most people sleep on straw mattresses stuffed with hay or dried leaves, laid directly on the floor or on low wooden platforms. You share yours with a sibling, and occasionally, a surprise rat. You fluff the straw a bit, mostly to discourage bugs, then collapse into it fully clothed. Changing into nightwear is a luxury for people who own more than one shirt. The goat tries to nest beside you. You push it gently away. It farts in protest. Someone snores. Someone else mutters in their sleep. You hear a mouse rustling in the corner. You pull your blanket closer and try not to think about lice, or fleas, or the fact that you haven't bathed in, well, let's just say, a while. You scratch an itch and pretend it's nothing. The ceiling above you groans as the wind picks up. Bits of thatch drift down like medieval dandruff. You wonder, vaguely, if the roof will hold through the night. It probably will. Probably. Somewhere, a dog barks. Then silence. Cold air creeps in through the doorframe. You curl tighter, trying to chase warmth, which is always just out of reach. You close your eyes, not because you're truly ready for sleep, but because your body demands it. You've used up all your energy just staying alive. You ache in places you didn't know you had. Your hands sting. Your feet throb. Your back mutters threats. But you made it through the day. You worked the land. You ate, sort of. You didn't freeze or fall in a pig trough. That counts as success. Tomorrow, it all happens again. The field, the mud, the cabbage, the goat-related betrayal. But for now, you rest. Sleep doesn't last long. It never really does. You wake before dawn, not because you want to, but because someone sneezed directly into your face. Or maybe it was the goat again, jabbing your ribs with its horns. Either way, consciousness arrives like an uninvited guest at a funeral. The air is still cold, the fire's long gone to embers, and your straw mattress has somehow managed to flatten even further overnight. You sit up slowly, feeling like a poorly designed puppet, every joint creaking in protest. There's a weird numbness in your arms, probably from sleeping on a rock disguised as hay. You rub your eyes, which just spread soot and straw fragments across your face, and grope for your shoes. They're damp. Again. Always damp. If shoes had emotions, yours would definitely be resentful. Outside, the village is still shrouded in a misty gray haze. Roosters have started their enthusiastic screeching, which means it's already time to start another round of surviving. You splash your face with cold water from the bucket near the door. It's been sitting out all night, and it hits your skin like a betrayal. You gasp, wide awake now. Breakfast is a formality. A crust of yesterday's bread and maybe a sliver of soft cheese that smells vaguely like foot regret. You eat in silence, chewing slowly, already thinking about the long day ahead. You're not even halfway through the week. You have no idea what day it is. Calendars aren't a peasant thing. You just work until something like a festival interrupts the loop. But this morning isn't for the fields. No, today, you're heading into the village center for communal obligations, which is a fancy way of saying you're stuck with everyone else cleaning, fixing, or preparing for something unpleasant, like the Reeves inspection or a noble visit. You sigh, pull on your damp cloak again, and step out into the mud. The village is just waking up. You see your neighbors yawning, chickens pecking aggressively at anything not nailed down, and a suspicious pig trotting by with something that might have been your cousin's glove. The buildings look tired too, slanted, patched, huddled close together like they're all bracing for a storm. You reach the communal space, which is really just a slightly wider patch of trampled earth near the church. People are already gathering, some carrying buckets, others with tools, one guy with a basket of ferrets. You don't ask. The day's task is maintaining the roads and cleaning the ditches. Because nothing says community spirit like scooping out weeks of runoff, garbage, and something that may have once been meat. You grab a wooden shovel and get to work, digging into the soggy trench with all the enthusiasm of a sleep-deprived snail. It's not just about cleaning. It's about obligation. Under the feudal system, peasants owe labor dues to the lord, and that includes maintaining infrastructure. If you don't show up, you're fined, or worse, assigned extra tasks like chasing geese or fetching water from the coldest well known to man. And no one wants to do that. Your arms are already tired by mid-morning. The mud is stubborn. It clings like it has abandonment issues. You slip at least twice and catch yourself on something sharp and unidentifiable. Your legs are speckled with grime, your sleeves soaked through. Someone tries to cheer everyone up by singing a work song. It's mostly about onions. A traveling peddler rolls through the village on a creaky cart, shouting about his wares, buttons, combs, dried herbs, and a magic tonic that definitely smells like old wine. You don't have money for any of it, but you watch wistfully as he shows off a tiny mirror. You catch your reflection for half a second. It's not great. You look like someone who lost a bar fight with a vegetable patch. Historians still argue whether peasants truly lived in constant drudgery or found moments of joy in their daily routines. Maybe it's a bit of both. Sure, you're ankle deep in what can only be described as communal soup, but you share a few laughs with your neighbors. Someone slips and lands with a muddy splat, and you all laugh. Not cruelly, just with the weary camaraderie of people who've accepted that dignity is a seasonal crop. You break for a quick meal. Someone brought boiled eggs. Someone else has oatcakes. You trade a piece of your stale bread for a sliver of salted fish. It tastes like the ocean and sadness, but at least it's different. You sit on a low stone wall, chewing slowly, watching the pigeons try to steal crumbs. One perches near your foot and stares at you like it knows something. You stare back. It wins. The local priest walks by, robes dusty, face grim. He nods at you, and you nod back. The church is the tallest building in the village. Part spiritual hub, part gossip center, part mildly terrifying symbol of divine hierarchy. You're not super religious, but you know better than to skip Sunday Mass or cross the priest. He's got pull with the reeve, and you suspect he sees everything, even that time you pretended to be sick to avoid threshing. By afternoon, the village looks slightly better. The ditches are clearer, the pathways less swamp-like, and someone's even fixed the leaning fence near the grain store. You feel marginally productive. Maybe even proud. Then the reeve arrives to inspect everything with a face that could sour milk. He pokes at the ditch with his staff, mutters something about lazy hands, and moves on. No one takes it personally. That's just his way. He's the kind of man who probably scowls in his sleep. You're released before sunset. You shuffle home again, dirt-caked and heavy-limbed, wondering if you'll ever be clean again. Spoiler: no. You pass the same pig, who's now dragging something that looks suspiciously like your other shoe. Inside your cottage, the fire's been rekindled. You drop your shovel, strip off your outer layer, and sit down hard. Your family is chatting about village news. Someone's cow gave birth. Someone else might be secretly hoarding apples. You nod, barely listening, already halfway asleep. Dinner is marginally better tonight. Someone found a turnip that wasn't completely hollow. A celebration. You fall asleep fast, wrapped in smoke and warmth and the quiet sounds of a life that's hard, messy, and very, very real. Another day gone. Another survival badge earned. The seasons change, but your schedule doesn't. Today, however, something new slices through the normal rhythm of drudgery. It's market day. And unlike your usual mud-covered routine, this one comes with noise, smells, strangers, and danger. Yes, danger. Because while markets are colorful and exciting, they're also where you're most likely to be robbed, swindled, trampled, or given very bad medical advice. But hey, anything to break the routine. You rise before the sun, yet again. It's a foggy morning, your breath curling in the air like smoke from a tired soul. You layer on your least wet clothes, stuff some coins into a secret pouch. You only have a few, but they're the sum of months of careful saving, and prepare to walk to the nearest market town. It's about 4 miles away. You'll be doing it on foot. Uphill. Both ways. In shoes that qualify more as foot suggestions. The journey is long, and not just in distance. You dodge ox carts, mud holes, and one very territorial goose. You pass other villagers also making the trip, some carrying baskets of goods, others dragging children who don't share your enthusiasm for commerce. Birds chirp overhead, but mostly you're just surrounded by the constant squelch of damp earth and the occasional aggressive sheep. Finally, you see it. The town. Or at least, the pale smoke rising above the trees, signaling fire pits and cooking stalls. You crest a hill and there it is. The market square, already alive with shouting, laughter, and the kind of chaos that can only come from people trying to sell you things you didn't know you didn't need. The town is technically a walled settlement, but the walls are more about deterrence than defense, weathered timber palisades and stone in places where someone really tried. You pass under the gate and are hit immediately by the sensory overload. It's like walking into a medieval theme park operated by ferrets on espresso. The smells are intense. Roasting meats, sour ale, sweaty travelers, sweet pies, and animal waste all converge into something that might knock over a lesser constitution. You push through the crowd, trying to stay alert. Pickpockets are real. One hand on your pouch, the other navigating elbows and livestock, you make your way into the thick of it. You pass stalls bursting with goods, baskets of apples, bolts of coarse cloth, smoked eels dangling like medieval party streamers. A man tries to sell you a cure-all potion made from blessed nettle and owl tears. You decline. He whispers something about your aura being off. You're not sure what that means, but it sounds like a personal attack. Another merchant offers you real sugar, which is either an outright lie or a serious risk to your wallet. Sugar, after all, is a luxury good in this era, more valuable than your entire week's labor. You pretend to be interested, nod a few times, and back away slowly. You'd rather not trade your shoes, soul, and 3 future children for a handful of sweetness. Historians still argue whether these rural markets truly offered upward mobility or were just a flashier form of feudal treadmill. Some accounts suggest a clever peasant could earn enough to better their lot, maybe buy a second shirt or even a pig. Others claim it was more about temporary distraction from relentless hardship. You suspect it's both. Or neither. Depends on how good the apple cider is. You pause to listen to a storyteller performing for a small crowd. He's animated, flailing his arms and mimicking knightly voices, telling tales of local legends and long-dead kings. The kids in the crowd are rapt. The adults pretend not to be, but everyone leans just a little closer. You catch yourself smiling. It's rare to hear stories when most of your daily dialogue is grunting at turnips. A juggler drops a torch, swears under his breath, and keeps going. A trained dog barks in rhythm to a tambourine. A woman balances a duck on her head while shouting the daily prices of eggs. It's a lot to take in. Eventually, you make your way to the livestock section, where animals are tied, penned, and poked. You're here for one thing, to possibly trade for a chicken that doesn't actively hate you. Your current one gives you the side eye every morning like you insulted her ancestors. You barter hard, squinting like you know the market value of poultry, and eventually walk away with a speckled hen that seems only mildly homicidal. Success. You grab a hot meat pie from a vendor, paid for with one of your precious coins. It's greasy, delicious, probably undercooked, and entirely worth the risk. You eat while sitting on a low stone wall, watching the marketplace swirl around you like a living creature. Someone nearby is playing a crude fiddle. A couple argues loudly over the price of onions. A child chases a goose and loses. There's a brief moment of calm. And then a commotion. Someone shouting, a man running, a pig squealing in protest. A thief. He darts past you, chased by the town bailiff, who is older, slower, and definitely not winning this foot race. The thief disappears into the crowd. Justice will probably not be served. You check your pouch. Still there. You exhale. You spend the rest of the afternoon cautiously shopping. You get some salt, a spool of thread, and a small wooden carving that looks like a hedgehog. You don't need it. But it made you laugh, and laughter is even rarer than sugar. Eventually, the sun dips low. The town crier rings a bell and announces the close of market day. Vendors begin to pack up, fires are doused, and the vibrant energy starts to dissolve into exhaustion. You hoist your bundle, adjust your cloak, and begin the walk home, your new chicken clucking disapproval from a woven basket. The path is quieter now. You pass the same trees, the same angry goose, the same suspicious puddle that might be deeper than it looks. You're bone-tired, full of pie, and somehow still cold. When you finally reach your village, the sky is a deep indigo. Stars flicker dimly above. The cottage glows faintly from within. You push the door open, let the warmth wrap around you like an old blanket, and step inside. Your family greets you with the enthusiasm of people who know any news is exciting news. You show off your modest haul. The chicken squawks rudely. You all eat what's left of the day's stew, laugh about the onion hag at the market, and then collapse into sleep. It wasn't easy, but it was something different. Something alive. Sleep doesn't come quickly tonight, not because of stress, but because you're still buzzing from the market's chaos and your heroic poultry acquisition. Your new hen, currently named Cluckles the mildly annoyed, is pecking gently at a piece of straw in the corner, already asserting dominance over your other chicken. You lie on your side, half listening to the small noises of home, crackling fire, low breathing, and the occasional mysterious creak that could either be the wind or your roof thinking about retiring. But you don't get to drift long. Dawn creeps in again like an unwelcome tax. The cold wraps around your ankles, demanding movement. Today isn't about community work or bartering adventures. It's about survival's sharpest edge. Illness, injury, and the absolute lottery that is medieval healthcare. You wake up with a dull ache in your jaw. It's been there for days now, gradually evolving from annoying to maybe this is how I die. It's probably a tooth. Maybe an infection. Definitely something that wouldn't exist if you just flossed, except flossing isn't a thing, and toothbrushes are still centuries from their glow-up. You rinse your mouth with cold water, hoping for a miracle. Spoiler: the miracle doesn't come. You debate whether to visit the local healer, a woman in the next village known for her herbal poultices and suspiciously large collection of dried frogs. She's halfway between folk hero and local menace. Some say she cured a boy of gout with a mushroom tea. Others say she cursed a man's beard off. Either way, she's your best bet. You make the trip after breakfast, bread and weak ale, breakfast of survivors, walking slowly to avoid jostling your aching jaw. The forest path to her hut is well-trodden and deeply eerie. The trees whisper in the breeze. Birds go suspiciously quiet when you pass. A raven watches you from a branch like it's taking notes. When you arrive, she's out front plucking herbs and humming something vaguely ominous. She glances at you, mutters, "Tooth spirits," and waves you in. Her home smells of mint, mold, and mystery. Dried herbs hang like leafy chandeliers from the beams. Bottles line the walls, some labeled, some not. You explain the pain. She pokes your cheek, nods sagely, and produces a small sack of something that looks like damp gravel. Boil this. Gargle. Spit. Repeat. You ask what's in it. She smiles. You don't ask again. Historians still argue whether folk healers like her were actually effective or simply the best available option when real medicine involved leeches and guesses. Truth is, she's probably more helpful than the barber surgeon down in town, who's equally happy to cut your hair or cut your leg off, depending on your mood. Because yes, barber surgeons are a thing. Licensed. No. Trained. Only in the "watched someone do this once" kind of way. Sterile tools? Absolutely not. You've seen his shop. It smells like blood and baked onions. His surgical knife is also used to open beer casks. So you're thankful for the gravel gargle solution instead of a full molar removal via chisel and prayer. Back in your village, you follow the instructions. The taste is indescribable. Think moldy pennies dipped in sadness. You gag, spit, try again. The pain dulls slightly. Maybe it's working. Or maybe you've just shocked your mouth into numbness. Illness in medieval times is a terrifying roulette. There's no germ theory. People think diseases come from bad air, evil spirits, or too much cold food. You catch a fever? Must have offended a saint. Coughing. Maybe someone cursed your lungs. Either way, you're encouraged to pray, bleed, or drink boiling nettle water. Sometimes all three in rapid succession. You remember the last time someone got really sick. Old Thomas, the carpenter. He came down with something awful, chills, vomiting, confusion. The healer gave him hot wine and mustard poultices. The priest gave him last rites. He survived. Everyone called it a miracle. He now walks with a limp and sees birds that aren't there. But he's alive. You check on your neighbor in the afternoon. Her son has the sniffles, and she's hanging garlic near the windows to ward off evil. You nod approvingly. It probably won't help, but it smells nice and keeps the chickens away. As evening approaches, your tooth pain retreats a little. Not gone, but dulled enough to chew again. You eat stew without whimpering and call that progress. Your family gathers around the fire. Someone tells a story about a knight who sneezed so hard he accidentally decapitated a thief. Probably not true, but entertaining. And you laugh, carefully. You think about what happens if things ever get worse. What if it's not a tooth? What if it's a fever, or a broken limb, or something that can't be fixed with herbs and garlic strands? There's no Real safety net. No clinics. Number 24-hour helpline. Just prayer, luck, and a healer with a frog on her shoulder. And that's the hard truth. You don't get sick days. You get sick consequences. Some people don't wake up from what starts as a cough. Others live for decades with ailments that, today, could be solved with a pill and a nap. Medieval medicine is equal parts superstition, experimentation, and endurance. You survive by being lucky, stubborn, or both. You lie down that night with a little pouch of dried lavender tied to your bedpost. It's supposed to promote healing and ward off nightmares. Mostly, it just smells nice. Your mouth still aches faintly, but at least you're not seeking out the town leech jar. Small victories. Outside, the wind howls softly. You pull the blanket tighter, close your eyes, and whisper a thank you to whatever spirit decided not to kill you with tooth pain today. You'll gargle again tomorrow, just in case. Your tooth pain is mostly gone by morning. Either the herbs worked, or your body gave up complaining. Either way, you're counting this as a win. Because today, you'll need full strength. There's a noble passing through the region, and that means the whole village is preparing to look slightly less bedraggled than usual. Think of it like medieval spring cleaning, except the guests can legally execute you for bad posture. You've heard the rumors for days. The Baron's men rode ahead last week to announce his tour. Part tax collection, part power flex, and part genuinely wanting to remind the peasants who's in charge. He's not your direct lord, but he's several rungs above him, which still makes you a speck of lint on his feudal tunic. You'll probably never get closer to him than a distant glimpse. And that's a blessing. The whole village is buzzing. Thatched roofs are patched, paths are swept, even the communal pigsty gets a splash of fresh straw. You're assigned to help tidy the little patch of ground near the old well. Which is great, because that also happens to be where the Baron will stop to graciously accept tribute, i.e., take some of your food and pretend it's a privilege for you. As you rake damp leaves and arrange sad little flowers, you think about what life must be like up there in the manor house. Endless food, soft beds, actual wine instead of, it's probably wine. But you also know the stories of harsh punishments, impossible demands, and the way nobility treats you like background noise. Sure, some nobles are fair. Others are fair. Horrible. Historians still argue whether nobles genuinely believed they were divinely superior, or simply leaned into the performance because it worked. Either way, they rarely lifted anything heavier than a turkey leg. You, meanwhile, lift buckets, firewood, and the crushing weight of serfdom, daily. The trumpets announce his arrival just after midday. You don't actually see the trumpeters, you just hear them off in the distance like the world's most arrogant geese. A cloud of dust rises beyond the tree line. Horses, banners, gold-threaded cloaks flapping in the breeze. His entourage looks like they walked off a tapestry. You and the rest of the villagers line up neatly, backs straight, heads slightly bowed, like schoolchildren waiting for inspection. The Baron rides in at the center of it all. He's older than you expected, with a hawk nose and very clean gloves. You can't stop staring at the gloves. You haven't even seen soap in 2 weeks. He barely glances at you, which is ideal. You don't want attention. Attention from nobility is like lightning, dramatic, unpredictable, and frequently fatal. A steward calls out names of people offering tribute. A sack of grain here. A salted ham there. A small cask of ale. All gifts from people who absolutely cannot afford to give anything. Your neighbor gets a nod of approval for his apples. You think he saved them just for this moment. He probably went hungry yesterday to impress a man who doesn't know his name. The Baron says something that makes the steward laugh. You don't hear what it is, but it's probably not, "Let's pay these folks more." And then, a surprise, the Baron dismounts. Apparently, he wants to stretch his legs and walk among the people. You freeze. So does everyone else. Because nobles walking among the people is never casual. It's performative, awkward, and potentially dangerous. Like watching a cat try to use a plow. He approaches your group slowly. His boots are spotless. One of his attendants trails behind with a handkerchief, ready to dab away any peasant proximity. The Baron asks someone their name. They whisper it. He repeats it wrong and keeps moving. You suddenly become incredibly interested in a clump of moss on the ground. He doesn't talk to you. Thank every saint. He makes a general comment about how loyal the landfolk seem, then remounts. The steward nods. The procession starts again, leaving the village with less food and more tension. Once they're out of sight, the villagers exhale as one. Conversations bubble up. Some are relieved. Others grumble. A few joke about how the Baron looked like a very tall baked pear. You walk home slowly, thinking about hierarchy. How the Baron can wander into your life, take what he wants, and vanish again, leaving your community scrambling to recover. How the system feels immovable, like trying to dig through stone with a wooden spoon. That night, at dinner, your family discusses the event. Your father's impressed the Baron didn't insult anyone this time. Your sister is still swooning over one of the squires. You say nothing, just quietly chew your stew and try not to imagine what it's like to be born into comfort. There's a fringe belief you once heard from the old widow down the lane, that nobility are actually cursed. She says they're doomed to be reincarnated as mice unless they earn true humility in their lifetime. It's definitely not in the Bible, but it's a comforting thought. You hope that Baron comes back as a field mouse, with very clean paws. Later, as you climb into bed, you stretch your aching limbs and think about power. Not the kind you'll ever have, but the kind that shapes your life from a distance. The kind that wears gloves and never digs in the dirt. You wonder if they ever think about you. Probably not. But you're too tired to be angry. Tomorrow, it's back to the usual rhythm. Fields, chores, aching backs. Still, for one day, your world brushed against theirs. And nothing changed. The day after the Baron's visit, life snaps back into its familiar, exhausting rhythm. You rise before dawn, the sky still smeared with purple, the air thick with the scent of damp earth and wood smoke. The village is quieter now, but the memory of yesterday's procession lingers like a stubborn shadow. You trudge to the fields, where the soil is sticky from last night's rain. Your hands are raw from pulling weeds, but the crops won't tend themselves. You glance around and notice how the village seems smaller today, weighed down by invisible burdens. The sun is already climbing, promising heat and fatigue. While you work, you overhear a few elders whispering about a strange illness that's been spreading through a nearby town. They say it's fast and cruel, wiping out families within days. No one knows exactly what it is. Some call it the sweating sickness, others whisper about a curse. You shiver, even though the sun warms your back. Disease here is a shadow no one can outrun. This reminds you of the time you heard that people sometimes wore masks stuffed with aromatic herbs during plagues, hoping to filter out the bad air. Sounds more like medieval perfume to you, but historians still argue whether these masks actually helped or just made the wearer look like a theatrical villain. During your midday break, you sit by the stream and fish with a makeshift spear. The water is cold and clear, running fast over smooth stones. You catch a small fish and admire its slippery sheen before roasting it over the fire. Eating fresh fish feels like a luxury, even if the bones try to lodge themselves in your throat. Later, as you're repairing a fence post, a sudden sharp pain shoots through your side. You freeze, wondering if it's a stitch or something worse. You remember hearing that medieval people thought such pains might be caused by the vapors or a wandering spirit. There's no doctor to ask, just your own guesswork and grit. Back in the village, you notice the blacksmith hammering away. His forge glows like a tiny sun. You wonder how he manages the heat without melting. The smith tells you a strange fact. In medieval times, ironworkers sometimes added crocodile dung to their furnaces, believing it improved the quality of the metal. The image makes you laugh and grimace simultaneously. The smith jokes about the dung, saying, "If it's good enough for ancient Egyptians, it's good enough for us." You think about the idea of using something so gross to make something strong. It's oddly comforting, like the idea that even the worst things might have a purpose. As dusk falls, you walk through the village, watching smoke curl from chimneys. Children chase each other with sticks, their laughter ringing like bells. You pause to watch the stars begin to twinkle, marveling at how clear the night sky is without city lights. One star winks at you, or maybe that's just a trick of your tired eyes. You recall the story your grandmother told about medieval stargazers who believed the heavens controlled their fate. You wonder if those stars are watching you back, silently judging your chance of surviving another harsh winter. You feel the weight of centuries pressing on you, the hopes, the fears, the endless work. And yet, there's something soothing in this rhythm, this slow dance between hardship and hope. You close your eyes, breathing in the cool night air, ready to rest, knowing tomorrow will bring more of the same. You awake to the steady drum of rain against your roof, a soothing sound that promises a day spent indoors, rare and oddly welcome. The fields wait, yes, but today feels like a pause, a chance to gather your strength. You wrap yourself in a worn cloak and sit by the hearth, the warmth seeping into your chilled bones. With chores limited to tending the fire and fixing a torn sleeve, your mind wanders. You think about the village's superstition-filled approach to weather. Rain is a blessing, sure, but too much is a sign that the gods, or maybe the local spirits, are angry. You remember old tales of people throwing offerings into streams to calm the rain gods, hoping to prevent floods that could wash away crops and homes. Historians still argue whether these rituals were truly believed or performed more out of tradition and habit. Regardless, the idea of negotiating with invisible forces feels oddly relatable. Sometimes, you almost want to throw your own offering into the fire and ask for a break. As the rain taps a steady rhythm, you dig through a pile of old parchments your family keeps. These faded pages hold scraps of medieval wisdom, from herbal remedies to farming tips and, surprisingly, a recipe for an early form of beer. You smile, imagining your ancestors brewing something that tasted like liquid bread, probably with a bit of mud for flavor. Nearby, your younger sibling attempts to knit a scarf, fingers fumbling awkwardly. You offer a gentle correction, but mostly just watch. It's moments like this, quiet, simple, that remind you life isn't all about survival. It's about connection, small victories, and learning the tricks that help you get through. You pick up a book with faded illustrations of strange creatures, basilisks, dragons, and giants. You remember the stories adults tell to keep children from wandering too far into the woods. A basilisk's gaze could kill, they say. Of course, you've never seen one, but the idea sparks a thrill and a chill. You wonder how much of medieval life was real danger, and how much was carefully crafted stories to keep people in line. Historians still debate whether fear or faith played a bigger role in shaping daily habits. Probably both. The rain lightens by afternoon, and you step outside to inspect the garden. The wet soil is soft underfoot, and you spot earthworms wiggling happily, a good sign of healthy ground. You pull weeds and marvel at how life keeps pushing through, no matter what. You think back to the blacksmith's crocodile dung story, chuckling to yourself. Life in the Middle Ages was weird and wonderful, cruel and hopeful all at once. Sometimes, that's exactly the balance you need to keep going. As evening falls, you settle again by the fire, the flickering flames casting dancing shadows. You feel the world slowing down, the day folding gently into night. The steady patter of rain continues, a lullaby that promises rest and renewal. You close your eyes and listen, letting the ancient rhythms of life and weather soothe your mind, preparing you to face whatever tomorrow brings. The next morning dawns crisp and bright, birdsong piercing the quiet before you rise. Today feels different, a buzz of excitement floats through the village. Word has spread that the traveling merchants are arriving soon, bringing goods and news from faraway lands. For you, this means a chance to glimpse things beyond your small world. Fabrics with colors brighter than anything your loom can create, spices that smell like magic, and stories that spark your imagination. You join the crowd gathered by the main road, watching carts lumber in, wheels grinding over ruts. The merchants set up their stalls with practiced efficiency, unpacking bolts of cloth, strings of beads, and barrels of dried fruits. You're drawn to a little chest filled with tiny glass bottles containing shimmering powders. The merchant claims these powders can cure everything from headaches to bad luck. The idea makes you suspicious, but also curious. You recall that medieval medicine was often a mix of herbal knowledge, superstition, and sheer guesswork. Historians still argue whether some remedies actually had benefits or were just clever placebo effects. You decide to pick up a small vial of something that glows faintly blue, wondering if it's safe, or just a clever trick. Nearby, a storyteller sets up a spot and begins to regale the crowd with tales of distant kingdoms and heroic knights. His voice rises and falls like the tide, weaving adventures that make your heart race and your eyes widen. You realize that stories like these are the medieval equivalent of Netflix binges, essential escapes from harsh realities. You notice a group of children gathered, hanging on to every word, their faces lit with wonder. It's easy to forget how rare entertainment is when survival dominates your days. You think about how different their lives will be from yours, assuming they survive childhood illnesses and endless work. One merchant shows off a strange device, a rudimentary clock that ticks loudly and mechanically. It's a rarity here. Most timekeeping is done by the sun or church bells. You think about how measuring time precisely would change life's rhythms. Historians still debate how quickly such technologies spread and who actually benefited from them. As the day stretches on, you barter for a small pouch of saffron, an extravagance, but worth it to add a little brightness to your family's meals. You imagine the golden threads swirling in the stew, like liquid sunshine on a gloomy day. The merchants pack up as the sun dips low, their carts creaking back down the road. The village buzzes with stories and traded gossip, everyone savoring the brief touch of the wider world. You walk home, the saffron pouch warm in your pocket. For a moment, you feel connected, not just to your village, but to the vast, messy, fascinating medieval world beyond. You wake up to the sharp smell of smoke curling through your window. The village is stirring faster than usual, a nervous energy buzzing in the cool morning air. You slip outside to find a small crowd gathered near the edge of the forest where a fire has broken out. Flames lick at dry brush, and the wind carries ash like dark snow. Someone yells that the fire could spread to the crops if not stopped quickly. You grab a bucket and join the frantic chain of villagers passing water from the well to the blaze. The effort is exhausting, your arms burning as you heave bucket after bucket of water. The fire hisses, but the combined force of human will and water eventually douses the worst of it. The village breathes a collective sigh of relief, but the damage to the edge of the fields is clear. You remember hearing that fire was one of the greatest threats to medieval villages. Thatched roofs, wooden beams, and crowded homes were a tinderbox waiting to ignite. Historians still argue whether medieval firefighting methods were effective or more of a desperate scramble with limited success. Later, as you inspect the blackened earth, a local herbalist gathers plants from the scorched area. She explains that some medicinal herbs thrive after fire clears the ground, making use of nature's reset button. It's a strange comfort, destruction that brings new life. You reflect on how intertwined danger and renewal are in this world. Every threat carries a hidden blessing if you know where to look. Back in the village, the smith's forge burns late into the night, a beacon of warmth and creation. The blacksmith jokes that after today's fire, he might start adding extra dung to his furnace. For good luck and strong metal, he says with a grin. You laugh, recalling the crocodile dung tale. Some habits die hard. As you crawl into bed, the faint scent of smoke still lingers, mingling with the earthy aroma of damp fields. The world feels fragile, balanced on the edge of flame and shadow. Yet, as your eyes close, you feel a steady heartbeat beneath it all, a rhythm of resilience that carries you through. Today, you find yourself tasked with collecting water from the village well, a deceptively simple chore that reveals just how vital and precarious daily life really is. The well stands in the village square, an ancient stone structure crowned with a wooden pulley system. It's been the heart of the community for generations, a place where whispered secrets, bartered goods, and weary greetings mingle in the cool morning air. As you lower the bucket, you notice the rope feels frayed, a reminder that even the most dependable things wear down. Pulling the heavy vessel up, you brace yourself for the cold splash and the weight of water that will sustain your family's cooking, washing, and thirst. You hear the occasional murmur about well water quality. Some say it's pure and life-giving, others warn of contamination and mysterious illnesses. You recall tales of medieval wells being poisoned during conflicts or slowly tainted by nearby latrines. Historians still argue how often waterborne diseases truly influenced medieval populations versus other factors like famine or plague. While filling your bucket, you spot a small wooden token hanging near the well. An old superstition that this charm protects the water from evil spirits or curses. It's a quaint reminder of how closely magic and practical life intertwined. You can almost picture villagers offering small prayers or throwing coins for luck. On your way back, you pass by the village healer, who is grinding herbs with a mortar and pestle. She hands you a small bundle of dried lavender and rosemary to ward off illness, a gift you accept gratefully. You think about how much reliance medieval folk placed on herbal knowledge, often passed down through generations, even if some remedies were more hopeful than scientifically sound. The day wears on with routine tasks, mending clothes, tending animals, preparing meals. The simplicity of it is deceptive. Each small job is a thread in the complex fabric that holds village life together. As evening falls, you pause to watch the sun dip behind distant hills, bathing the village in soft gold. The well, the smoke from chimneys, the silhouettes of your neighbors moving about, it all feels like a fragile yet enduring scene from a world that's both harsh and oddly beautiful. You remind yourself that surviving medieval life isn't just about strength or skill. It's about adapting, believing in tiny protections, and finding moments of peace amid uncertainty. The air is cool tonight as you lie on your simple pallet, the faint scent of straw and wood smoke mingling in the quiet room. The village has settled into a gentle hush, broken only by the occasional hoot of an owl or the rustle of leaves outside your window. You feel the weight of the day's labors settle into your muscles, the comforting ache that means you've done your part. Your thoughts drift back through the days you've lived here, the hard work in fields softened by fresh rain, the strange tales from wandering merchants, the fiery scare at the forest's edge. Each memory is like a thread woven into a tapestry of struggle and small joys. You remember the blacksmith's crocodile dung story and the lavender charm by the well, curious reminders that life in the Middle Ages was equal parts practical and peculiar. It's humbling to think about how few would survive even a week in this world. You imagine the daily dangers, disease, fire, famine, and the resilience needed just to keep going. Historians still argue how much the average person could influence their fate versus being swept along by forces beyond control. But tonight, you focus less on survival and more on the quiet beauty of existence itself. Outside, the stars twinkle with ancient light, silent witnesses to centuries of lives much like yours, filled with hope, fear, laughter, and tears. You feel connected to those unknown souls who once looked up at this same sky, wondering if they'd make it through another winter. You take a deep breath, letting the soft hum of the night lull you closer to sleep. The rhythms of the past and present intertwine in your mind, a gentle reminder that every era carries its own challenges and miracles. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're settling deeper now, the slow breath of the evening easing all tension. Imagine the village fading into twilight, the hard edges softened by the glow of distant lanterns and the gentle rustle of leaves whispering secrets only the night can keep. The workday's weight lifts from your shoulders, replaced by a peaceful calm that wraps around you like a warm, familiar blanket. Every heartbeat slows, each exhale a little longer than the last. The ancient world you've wandered feels less distant now, more like a quiet companion settling beside you in the dark. You're safe here, in the comfort of stories that stretch across time, soothing and steady. Let the images fade slowly, like a candle's flame flickering low, until all that remains is the steady pulse of your own breath and the soft hum of a world resting, waiting to greet you with morning light. Sleep well, knowing you've glimpsed a life tough but full of moments worth remembering. Sweet dreams.